any luck. So let's go over to the grinder and we'll sharpen the lathe. Rest the wheel. I want to have a back angle on the lathe bit just like with the drill bit. I want to have the cutting edge cut and this part not rubbed. It has to be there to support the cutting edge, but just. Also, I'm going to put a little rounding on the end of it. That makes the lathe bit just a little bit stronger. So as I'm doing the cutting, it'll last and hold an edge longer. Just a little bit below the center. Below center is better than above. Right on center is best. My ruler is straight up and down. That means that my lathe bit is touching the center of that shaft. That pinches the ruler in between the lathe bit and the material, and I'm on center. You can spend a lot of money and buy some really neat tools, and they are neat, that will do the job of making sure that that lathe bit is on center. But at the same time, that little ruler works pretty good and it doesn't cost diddly. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that was a freebie given to me by Anchor Abrasives. Now I have the lathe set on low speed. I have an 1.25 inch diameter part in the lathe. That means I want to run about 360. That's pretty close to the slowest speed this lathe runs. I always like to unplug the lathe when I'm working on this part. A friend of mine, long ago, was working on the lathe and changing the gearing. Got his finger caught between two of the gears. Tore a big chunk right out of it. So I tend to err on the side of caution on that one. About 11 years old when that happened. I remember it quite clearly. Wheels traveling that way, that means that the cutter's going that direction. That means that I'm going to be cutting towards the chuck. Now that I've verified everything's working the way I want it to, I'm going to come up and just kiss off. While I was cutting over here, I looked around and found a carbide bit in a little better shape. It lets me run a little heavier cut, a little higher speed. The thing it has to have, though, it doesn't like interrupted cuts. So I went down below the surface of the material, down below the scale. You can see I'm running a full chip all the way across this thing. That way I can get this turned down a lot faster. So I have to take that shaft down to this side. And that's going to be quite a lot of turning. But it's a left-hand bit. So I'm cutting from the left to the right. Had to change around the drive unit on the lathe so that I was running left to right. Turning on a lathe is a whole lot of standing around watching the thing go left to right. Spin, spin, spin. After changing out several cutting tips, I've ended up with a 90-degree carbide tool in there. Seems to be cutting pretty well. Had some problems with chatter. The tailstock was coming loose. Also ended up tightening the gibs on the cross slide. Now we're starting to make a cut. I'm going to finish this cut, and then I'm going to up the speed a little bit, see if I can't get the cutting speed up a little higher. The new motor mount's making it so that belt doesn't slip at all now. If I tried to cut this much material with the old setup, it would have stalled the belt out long ago. Unplug the lathe. Move the belt over. Next higher set of pulleys. See what happens. Helps if I plug the lathe back in again. Too much. I get tired of sweeping up chips. I kind of like to have them stay in the chip pan, but kind of a mess here. And these chips are nicely razor sharp, and I'd rather not get them all over me. But to make things work, sometimes you have to do what you have to do. Cool thing about doing your own work, you get to do innovative things and nobody's watching, except of course you guys. And I get to try things like a piece of paper and a magnet. Makes a pretty good chip deflector. And if it gets chewed up, hey, I'm out of piece of paper. Actually, it looks like it's cutting pretty good. Now, if that wasn't a carbide cutter, I'd put a little groove on it and that would make it into a chip breaker, and it would just take those chips and bust them right up, and they'd end up in little bitty pieces. Instead of these long, stringy pains in the butt that they are. It's turning. It's removing stock. Taking the shaft down to the size that I need it to be. What could be better?